This morning here we're in a 30-acre field that formerly was corn and soybean rotated every year. Prime farmland, good for 250 bushel corn and 80 bushel soybeans in the right year. But with crop prices in 2025, we decided that we would get away from that and try to prove that we could make more money actually growing a forage crop and grazing it with calves or something than we could with a corn or soybean crop. So that's what we did in 2025. We came in here in about late May and planted sorghum sudan cross in here. Got a good stand. We did that no-till, by the way, and that was a little tricky, but we got it done, got a good stand. It was very dry, but the crop seems to like that and came on nicely. And about 30 days later, near the end of June, we were able to graze for the first time. We had 245 head of 7-weight steers to bring in. In all, through the whole program of the summer, we rotated 4 times, each with about 30 days of rest. Always using the group of 245, which was too many probably. We had some problems, I think, with that we can alleviate in 26 as we do the program again. After that third rotation, we no-tilled the rye that we're looking at here, the rye, and we added kale with it, hoping that we would get some fall grazing. It was very dry. We didn't get much growth, so we didn't get any fall grazing, but it's looking pretty good for spring grazing here in 2026. So we'll graze here as best we can, and then about that same date, probably in late May or early June, we'll get this killed and come in with sorghum sudan and some small forage. We're not sure what that's going to be yet. With regard to the challenges that we faced, which were several, and we were inexperienced. So if you're a person that's thinking about doing a program like this, maybe we can help you a little bit by mentioning a couple of things. First of all, I'm not sure of the right size of calf for this work. I'm not convinced that it was those 700 pounders, but maybe there's a calf that's too small to come in here and work on sorghum sudan. I don't know whether that's a reason for the trampling that we had, the walking that we had with the 700 pound calves, but we're going to be looking at that. We're going to be working with some different sizes, and we're also not going to have a group of 245 head like we did in 25. I think that's way too many, and so we're going to segment the 65 acres we have so that we can have 3 or 4 groups instead of just one. With regard to water, that will help our water situation as well. We'll have a smaller group going to the water and congregating there on a hot day. And hopefully we can change our paddock size with temporary fencing a little bit more, work with that a little bit more, where we will not have as much trampling, walking in a smaller paddock size. We had a forage that got really tall, and we couldn't keep up with it, quite frankly. This year, we hope to be able to rotate, and in 26, rotate a little bit better so that we can keep our forage height at a more agreeable size for the calves that we're grazing, and get some better results with that as well. And average daily gain would respond as well, we would hope. With regard to soil health in the practices like this, one of the things that you notice right away in any grazing situation, particularly those that have a high density, in other words, lots of pounds of cattle in a small area, you would see a lot of manure chunks here that were spread out either by the foot action of the calves themselves or by the no-tilling of the rye in September. I'm not going to get into the science of that, but it's obvious that any grazing situation with manure and the urine that comes from cattle returning 80% of the nutrients that are required to keep crops growing, returning 80% to the ground, it's a very favorable situation for soil health. One of the things we really like to do in a good grazing program is extend the grazing season. So that was the reason why after the third rotation of the sorghum sudan, we no-tilled the rye and kale here, thinking that after the killing frost and the danger of prussic acid was passed with the sorghum sudan that was left after the fourth rotation, then we would be able to, in a few weeks anyway, and before a heavy winter frost or whatever, we'd be able to graze the rye and the kale and extend our grazing season further with those same calves. Or if we'd already shipped the calves, with a group of cows that we had at that time. And then still come back in the early spring, where we are now on this field right now in early March, for another graze of the rye and the kale that wasn't hopefully completely killed with the winter freezing. With regard to the major question then on this project, and that is whether we made any money with the calves on here instead of a crop of soybeans in 2025. On the project, we made $58 per acre profit, as compared to the projected losses that we would have had from either a corn after corn, or soybean crop after corn here on all our 65 acres of row crop land. I feel like another advantage of this program is the ability to be flexible. In other words, if crop prices come back and we see a big increase in soybean and corn prices, then we might feel like the numbers would switch back the opposite way, and the row crops would exceed the profitability of livestock grazing. The flexibility of it in any kind of grazing program, where you can be adaptive to the situation, is a distinct advantage.